Okay. I just had to sneeze a whole bunch, so hopefully that's all done and I don't do that anymore. Um, and hopefully this works out okay. We have, do a little adjustment there. We have a very significant storm taking place right now. It started yesterday and went all night, and it's still going on today. And I don't know how long it's supposed to last, but it's got my head is spinning with all kinds of stories that I want to share about the storms of life and things God has taught me. And it's really not bothering me any, but the wind is pretty noisy, and so I don't know if my mic's going to pick it up or not. Hopefully not. And my husband's doing some stuff in the other room, and just kind of having to work with what I got today. So we are now starting to go on the backside of our 8-part series on Wake Up. And what that is, for those of you that haven't seen the previous videos, this is number 5, right? Did I say that? Oh, you guys, I need so much help. Okay, this is number 5 out of the 8 parts. And back in 2015, the Lord began to deal with me that I needed to wake up, that He was calling His children to wake up. And so He began to show me how, what that meant, and how I had kind of gone into autopilot because of all the things that were going on in my life. That's I think how I was surviving, was just being on autopilot, and I needed to be alert, not on autopilot. And then He gave me a list of 7 things that needed to change in my life, be stepped up in my life, because some of them were things I was already doing, but He was saying, you need to do it to a greater degree now. And He began to show me that there are things that are going to change in life. And some of those changes have already impacted the world, and there's more to come. There's a lot more to come. And so today is the 4th thing on the list of 7 that He shared with me that I'm going to share with you. And it's about sharing. It was to share what you have, that we're to share what we have. There's been many times when hard times have hit, like the Great Depression, when that happened, and different world wars that have taken place, or other wars, and how when there's a time of tragedy, trauma, loss, that people tend to come together and start helping each other more. We become more generous with each other. And the thing is, if you're a follower of Christ, we're always supposed to have a generous heart, that if we see anybody in need, we're supposed to help them. And so don't always wait until, everything falls apart, until the storm hits and people start losing everything. But we should always have that heart in us that says, that everything, New Testament teaching on giving is that everything that I have is not mine, but it really is to belong to God. So that if He says, like in previous videos, sign your car over to somebody else, do it. That we're not supposed to be attached to our stuff. They're tools and instruments that are not only to help us, but sometimes to help somebody else. So he said, on the 4th thing on this list, share what you have. And so I was asking the Lord, what story do I tell them? And so He reminded me about a situation that happened, actually kind of back in the beginning, when God was telling me all this stuff is when this happened. So I'm going to share that story with you, and forgive me for the throat clearing. It's going to be a few weeks of this while I adjust to the changes in the weather. It happens every year. Since I was a little girl, it's always been. So some kind of allergy to the fall relation, I guess. But anyway, back to our story. So my husband and I were I don't remember what all was going on except for that money had gotten really, really tight. And we were, harvest was over. We were into, I believe we were in the winter months. And so his pay would always go down in the winter because they made a lot more. Well, when you're almost working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's a lot of overtime. And so his paychecks in the summer were way better than the ones in the winter. And we usually would put some of that back to kind of help us through the winter. But we were still trying to get a hold on, working out our finances and stuff. And I had been working, and I think that my job had come to an end at that point. Anyway, whatever the reasons, we were financially very, very tight. And so we had $50 in the bank. That was all we had left to us that we could spend, until the next paycheck. And so I think we were going to go get some groceries. I think we were pretty low on food is what the deal was. And so we went to the bank to get our last $50 that we had to stretch till the next paycheck. And so we went into the bank and we went up to the window. Nice little girl that was our teller. And, we wrote out their little, withdrawal slip that we needed $50 out. And so, okay. And so she gave us our $50. And I think there'd even been a joke like, how do you want that back? And my husband's like, give me a full $50 bill. So anyway, when we were standing there filling out the slip and getting the money, I had this sense that we needed to give that money to her. It was a weird thing. And I'm like, I don't even know her. And we can't give her money in the bank. I used to be a bank teller. I know that would get her into some serious trouble. She couldn't receive money from us in the bank. And unless things have changed a lot since I was a bank teller, and since that was back in, about 300 years ago, I'm sure a lot has changed. So anyhow, we got our money and we started to walk out to the parking lot. And my husband was kind of walking a little slow, and I was walking a little slow. And we went out the door. And when we got outside, he turned to me and he said, this is going to sound really odd, but he goes, we need to go back in there. And I said, yeah, we do. And he said, I think we're supposed to give her that $50. I said, I've been feeling the exact same thing. And he goes, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's going, that's so weird. We don't even know her. And why, and I go, I don't know. But he goes, well, we need to go in and give her this 50. I go, we can't give it to her in the bank. It'll get her in trouble. So what we need to do is go in and tell her we would like to talk to her personally, about something personal. And so that, see when her break is or whatever, so that we can see if she would meet us out here outside the bank and we could talk to her for a minute, because I don't want to get her in trouble. He goes, yeah, no, we don't want to get her in trouble. So, okay, that's what we'll do. So we went back in to the bank and she was helping somebody. And so the other teller's like, I can help you here. And we're like, no, we kind of need to talk to her. And he's like, oh, okay, and so when she got done with who she was helping, we stepped up there and she's like, oh, was something wrong in the transaction or something, or did you need something more? And we're like, no, this is not, it's not about that. We just kind of need to talk to you about something more personal that has nothing to do with the bank or anything. Do you have a break coming up or something? Would you be willing to, I know it sounds weird, my husband's saying, but would you meet us out front so we could talk to you for a minute? And she goes, yeah, sure, no problem. She's probably going, well, two little old people, how much danger can they be? So she said, in fact, I was supposed to get off 5 minutes ago, but I was helping that customer. So she goes, so all I need to do is go clock out and I'll meet you out front, no problem. So we're like, okay. And we're like, oh, that was easy. So we went out front and we waited, and pretty soon here she comes with her purse and stuff. And she goes, so what's going on? And so my husband, he's got that $50 bill folded up in his hand, and he goes, well, this might all sound a little strange to you, but he goes, but we're Christians, And when we were in there getting this money out of the bank, we both felt that God had told us that we're supposed to give you this money. But my wife said when we came out and talked about it, that we couldn't give it to you in there. So we just wanted you to come out here so we could give you this $50. And she looked at us and she goes, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah, we don't know what's going on or why. We just know God said to give you the $50. So we just want to be obedient to him and give it to you." And she just kind of looked at us for a minute, and tears started rolling down her cheeks, and the counselor came out and me. I went back in time to being a counselor. I'm like, "Well, what's going on? You know, what's the problem or whatever?" And she goes, "Okay." She goes, "My husband and I have 4 little girls." And she goes, "I wasn't working because I was staying home with the 4 little girls, and my husband had a really good job. But then, without any warning, he lost his job. And so he went out to try and get a job. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't find anything." And she goes, "And then I started looking, and and then pretty soon unemployment ran out, and she said it got really bad, and we ended up losing our home. And so we've been living in our van with our 4 little girls." And she goes, I know God." She goes, I grew up in church or whatever." She goes, "But I haven't really been living my life right. And I haven't been living for him." And she goes, "Things got really bad." So she goes, "I started praying again, and I started to try to rebuild a relationship with God. And I told him we need his help." And she goes, "About that time," she goes, "I got this job. And she goes, "My husband still hasn't gotten work. So he stays in the van with the kids while I work." And she goes, "I've only been here a few weeks. It's part-time at best." She goes, "I just fill in when somebody's sick and can't come in, then I'm the one that comes in. I'm the sub that covers for them." So she goes, "It's not guaranteed hours or anything." She goes, "It's where they're starting me." And she goes, "Now I have been able to work, 3 or 4 days a week." She goes, "I'm very thankful for that." But she goes, "Yeah, it's been really, really rough." And so she goes, "My husband will be here pretty soon, with the girls to pick me up." And so she goes, "That $50," she goes, "That means we could go to a motel tonight, and we could take baths, and we could, and she goes, and we could get a little something to eat too, and she goes, that'll do." She goes, I just got paid." So she goes, "I was planning to take that money to go get us some food." And she goes, "This would actually give us a safe place to sleep tonight." And so my husband's like, "Well, you better take this money." And he's trying to hand it to her. And so she went ahead and took it, and just was thanking us, and was there anything she could do for us? And we're like, "No, just keep pursuing God, keep pursuing that relationship with him, and we're going to be praying for you, and we'll, when we come into the bank, when we see you, we're going to ask you how it's going." And she told us something that God had told her that she needed to do, that she needed to get right. And her husband had even said, "We need to do this to get this right." And she goes, "But I keep saying, dragging my feet because I'm so afraid." And so we said, "Well, if God said do it, then don't drag your feet because you're afraid." Here I am, the queen of fear, telling her, "Don't be afraid." And so she goes, "I know, I'll tell him tonight, we'll do it." And so she had told us what it was. And so I said, "I'm going to come back and because I have to come to the bank when we get paid, and if I see you, I'm going to ask if you have taken care of that." And so she goes, and she's had a big smile on her face. "You do it." She goes, "Because I'm going to take care of it. She goes, "God's taking care of me. He's taking care of my kids. He's taking care of my husband." She goes, "This proves it to me tonight. We're going to be okay." And so I was like that, we're so awesome. We're just like, oh, we wished we had something more to give her, but we didn't. And we even talked and we got in the car, should we go tell them they can come stay at our house? Should we move them in with us? And then we both were like, no, God didn't tell us to do that. And we need to do what he tells us to do because, he's got a reason why he's doing what he's doing. And they'll be in a motel tonight and they'll be safe. And it was a real shake up for us. Now, we were in financial need, and right after that, God gave us a huge, unheard of financial miracle, which again is something I want to share. I would like my husband to be a part of us sharing that with you and see if he even feels that we should, because it's something big God's done, but we've sat on it. We've only told one or maybe two people about it, and it's just because that's kind of, sometimes God says, not now, not yet. And so I wanted to make sure that it's the right time and not get ahead of him. And maybe it's something that will only stay with a few people. I don't know. I don't know. I cannot explain God. I do not understand how he thinks. I just know I can trust him. So I want you to know that we did check back with that little gal at the bank, and she did take care of what God had told us she needed to take care of. She showed us the proof of it. In fact, so we wouldn't think she was just saying it. And shortly, I think it was within the next few days after we'd given her that $50, her husband had got a job, a really good job. And so they were working it out. Um, he hadn't started yet, but she was going to be quitting her job to stay with the kids. And not only, she told us, not only has all this happened, she goes, but let me tell you, God gave us a house and he hasn't even started the job. And it was all connected with some other things that God worked it out. So they had a place to live. And, she goes, it's the nicest house I've ever lived in. And she was just so happy about everything God was doing, and her walk with God was getting really solid. So that was a time when God told us to share what we had with somebody, and we didn't even know why. Now there's other obvious times and things that we do. I've given a car to somebody before. My husband's given a car to somebody before, because God told us to. We've had people come and stay with us. We have done that because God told us to. um, there's a lot of things that there's a person in our life that doesn't always have food, and we don't, not that we have a ton of it ourselves, but we always share with them what we have until they're able to get some food. And so I believe that I always say I believe, and then I change it to no, I know, because God showed me things are going to get harder than what they are right now. And a lot of people are walking around asleep and in a daze, and they just believe life's going to go back to the way it was, and it's not. They believe things are going to get better and easier, and in some ways it may look that way for a while, but it's kind of like the world famine that happened in the time of Joseph. They had these years of plenty that came up before the famine hit. Well, we've had some years of plenty, and the famine is about to hit. And I would tell you, you need to listen to God, because you probably need to make sure you have extra food in your home, that you have not just extra food temporarily, but that you have a system. I mean, that's one thing that's changed with us, is we have a whole system now that we're always working through to make sure that there is food for beyond today or just this week, that we've got something if we needed to go a little more long term and weren't able to get food for whatever reasons, and to have something to share with somebody else. And I think that's the thing with all the stuff we do, is we're always looking to make sure that there's not only what we need for ourselves, but something extra to share with somebody else too. So I believe that sharing, I know in our life that's already a huge thing. There was, my husband went and and did some yard work for a woman that couldn't afford the help and couldn't do it herself, and he just went and took care of it here not too long ago. That even when you have a business and it's about making money, sometimes there are people that need your help, but they can't afford you. And my husband has been very gracious in many situations to go and just help them. And I'll tell you, in return, people help us. Um, they bring stuff to us. Yeah, hey, do you need this? I've got some extra. Yeah, we need it. So that's sharing with each other. And I know that right in this little area where we live, I know who my neighbors are. I know them pretty well. I even know some down some of the other streets and down a little further down the road. But I know my immediate, there's 4 houses. There's nobody on our side of the road. But there's 4 houses directly across from us, and I know who they are. And you know, I all of us kind of share with each other. I mean, I know that all 4 of those homes, ever so often somebody shows up from one of those homes on my doorstep with something that they made, and some baked goods or something, or something they had extra, or could you use this, and I'm doing that with them. And so we've already kind of got a little network of for the most part, of kind of watching out for each other and sharing with each other. So this sharing is going to become more and more important. And so if that is something that feels significant to you, or feels like that relates to you, then pay attention and be ready to share. Okay. If you want to know the last 3 things on the list and you're not subscribed, then you better subscribe so you can hit that notification bell. And each day when my video comes up, you'll know and you'll be able to see what comes next. All right. Thank you for those of you that are hitting the like button, for the comments. I appreciate them all so much. And yeah, again, I just want to say goodnight to my granddaughter Paige, because I know you'll be listening to this before you go to sleep. All right. I love you guys, and I will talk to you. Have a great day. Yeah, I should. And I'll talk to you later. All right.